be about 15 stick handles in front of Nicholas Backstrom, and at the last
now moving in, Grieger there, and Texier beats him. Of this season, roars on in, and scores! A beautiful move by Couturier.
Filthy, sick, you name it.
How about that new intro, boys? That actually didn't take too long to make, but that was really fun to make. Welcome back to Silky Mitts free agency edition. We were unsure that we were going to do this podcast, but this was by far the craziest free agency I have seen in a long time, especially because we have overpaid defensemen here and there and everywhere. We'll get into that later. We're back. We thought we were going to have a full squad. Jordan Hesh couldn't make it with us. So we have Tim Rogers and Chris Lemmo. Chris, where are you right now? You're not in your little den.
No, I know. I don't have my jersey either. I'm on the road up in Binghamton right now. By the way, it was the former home of Arnie, our guy from Penn State hockey, my son out here. He was, unfortunately, the Devils actually relocated their AHL team from Binghamton this coming year. But good to be back. Good to talk some free agency. And, yeah, a lot of overpaid defensemen.
Tim, you're still in the same spot. You still got, is that an Anders Lee jersey?
It's actually a Pajama Boy jersey.
I
did it for free agency. I don't know. Can you see it? The Pajama Boy on there. I thought it'd be special for the free agency special, so I thought
I'd gotta wear that to a Penn State game for NHL. You gotta wear that.
Absolutely.
We'll just say it's an Anders Lee jersey. That's awesome. I'm rocking one of my first jerseys in honor of Alex Ovechkin getting signed by the Washington Capitals. I mean, we all saw it coming. So with that, we're going to get into what I like to call the no-brainer contract. So we're going to talk about guys like, of course, Ovechkin, Landeskog, Taylor Hall, Cale Makar, and other stuff like that. So let's start first with Alex Ovechkin, probably the greatest goal scorer that's ever played in the NHL. He's at 730. He signed to a 5-year, $9.5 million contract with Washington. People were a little surprised about the term. It was 5 years, part of which was because of him trying to break the all-time goal record. So before I give my thoughts, maybe biased, maybe unbiased, I don't know. Why don't you guys give your thoughts about, was he overpaid? Was the term not right? Because, there's a lot of comments on Twitter and Instagram saying, oh, wow, he was overpaid. He'll be 36 and the contract ends till he's 41.
I think it's definitely a longer term than I would have given. I thought that Washington was going to do 3 years, and that's what I would have done. I mean, we all know he's goal chasing. We all know he's going for that Gretzky record, and I think he could easily beat it. He is, without a doubt, the greatest goal scorer of our generation. And I don't think the money value was as bad as people make it sound. I think 9.5 is very good per year. I mean, it's $47 million in total, which isn't bad. But a guy who got 24 goals and 42 points in 45 games last year, yeah, I would pay that guy 9.5. Yes, the age could be could be an issue, as we kind of saw it in the playoffs that he wasn't really himself coming off that injury that he had. But I think the Caps know that their window is closing from being one of those top teams in the Metropolitan Division and just in the Eastern Conference in general. So they know, with Oshie aging, Carlson's getting up there, Kuznetsov, who knows what's going to happen there. They're getting older, and they know that I would say these next 2-3 years are their last push, really, to make a run in the playoffs. So I'm not too mad at the money, but I would say the term's a little bit too much.
Yeah, I mean, For me, Ovechkin is one of the few, very few guys that I would pay until he's 40. I mean, he seems like one of those players. I mean, as they say, Russian machine never breaks. He just he's one of those guys that I completely would trust playing and staying close to his level until he's 40. For me, I actually thought it was a matter of maybe he would want to go shorter because he thinks he can break Gretzky's record pretty quickly, and then he would want to go back to Russia or whatever and play. I know that had been rumored for. So I was surprised on his end that he wanted 5 years instead of like 4. But I think he'll be fine. I would be more worried about maybe like an Oshie or Backstrom or something towards the end of their contract rather than Ovechkin, just because I trust him so much to play out his contract and be pretty much the same guy through his age 40 season. Now, the Caps have done a good job keeping that window open. They've gotten guys like I like the Sprong signing a lot. Cheris been pretty good. Tom Wilson, obviously, I think their best under 30 player on the roster right now. But they still have a couple of guys on that roster. Oshie will be 35 this year, I believe. Backstrom will be 34. So, yeah, I mean, obviously it's all about keeping that big three of Oshie, Backstrom, Ovechkin together for a couple more seasons. But of those three, I really trust Ovi the most through the end of his contract.
Yeah, you guys made some great points. Like, people say he was overpaid due to the age, but the Capitals don't run without Alex Ovechkin. So he had to, because he has done so much for the organization. Chris, you lived in the DMV for a while now. Wherever, sporting or sports shop or ice rink you went, all you saw was number 8 everywhere. That's how much of we have not seen an athlete in the DC area that has had much of an impact as Alex Ovechkin. Bringing back the Stanley Cup in 2018 was huge for not only him, but also the city and the area. So and he even got less because he was making 9.4 on his 13-year deal. Now he's making 9.5. I do agree with you. I would have liked 4 by 10 because of the guys that you mentioned that are getting up there in age, and Ovi might go back to Russia, and then Ovechkin and Backstrom would finish their careers at the same time. Backstrom has one more year left after, or no, I'm getting confused, but if Ovi would have taken 4 years, then they would have finished their careers together at the same time. But yeah, Ovi has proved so many times he's not slowing down. I remember after he had his 33-goal season in 2017, people were like, oh, this is it. That's the end. He scores 49, I think, the next year, and then they win the cup, and then he has a 50 in the shortened season. So he's proved that, whenever I say, oh, this is the year he's going to slow down, he doesn't slow down. So good on Brian McClellan. The Capitals could have given him a blank check, and they would have paid it to him. He easily could have asked for 10, 11, even 12 million. Brian McClellan was able to trade Brendan Dillon to free up some cap space, which was good. They actually just, right before we hit the record button, they just signed Ilya Samsonov to a 1-year, $2 million deal. So the Caps offseason is likely complete. We'll get into winners and losers and stuff like that later. So that's it, I guess. On Ovechkin, happy he's back. I couldn't see it any other way. It'd be interesting. So his contract will end till he's 41. That would be the longest tenured DC athlete in history. So that just shows you the leverage of him and the organization. And, he's been able to, he saved the Capitals from, they were about to sell the team. They were about to relocate. And then he comes and, he changes the whole dynamic of the city, and everything in the cup was obviously huge. So I could talk about this all day, but we're going to switch to the Colorado Avalanche, another captain. Chris, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I actually did want to chime in real quick because like you said, living in the DMV for a while, I can attest to. I mean, he's turned that into a hockey town, Ovechkin, which is crazy to think about. I mean, I know, obviously the football team is, has gone through a lot, and the Nats, yeah, they won a World Series, and now they're kind of in the dumps again. But he's turned that into a hockey town. I mean, they have been consistent competitors for over a decade now. I still remember going to the old MCI Center, and I think it was my birthday party at a Caps Flyers game a long time ago. And I still remember the Alexander Semin days. And yeah, I mean, it was when Ovi first came up, it was a dark time. I mean, the arena was not filled, and now it's like sold out every game. I mean, it's amazing what he's turned that franchise into. And because of that, yeah, he could have, and I thought he was going to demand over 10 million a year. So pretty amazing that they got him for 9.5 apiece. And yeah, he absolutely deserves, a massive farewell tour. Like you said before, it looks like Ovechkin, Backstrom, and all them, their contract expires a year earlier. Ovechkin will have a great farewell tour, as he very well should.
Yep. So he needs to average 33 goals of the 5 years to break Gretzky's record, which will be incredible if he does. In my opinion, I don't think he does it, but he will be very close. I think he'll definitely be in the top 3, top 2 all time. And that's still really, really good. So, Chris, I'm glad you brought that up. We're going to head out west to Denver. Another captain, Gabe Landeskog, signs an 8-year, $7 million AAV deal with Colorado Avalanche. And guys, I'm not going to lie, I was very worried that they were not going to get a deal done because progress was not going well. Colorado had Cale Makar and Philip Grubauer to sign. Grubauer signed with Seattle. I was not sure that he was going to stay, but I'm actually really glad that he stayed because he actually had a really good year. I'm not sure about his stats, but I know he had a very good year, and he's only 28, which is, I thought he was a lot older than that. So why don't you guys give your thoughts on that? Overpay, underpaid? What do you guys think?
Well, I mean, I think you speak for yourself here when you say you're happy he stayed at Colorado. I was hoping he would go here. That was the game plan for us, that he would, because hearing that there was no progress made. And that days before they signed, we heard that they were as far apart as they could be, both sides. I think it's a very good deal. For a guy who had 20 goals last year in 54 games, 52 points, he had 13 points in the playoffs. He's a great goal scorer in this National Hockey League, but more importantly, he's a fantastic leader. And that's what Colorado needs, is somebody to lead them to that next level. And we saw it in the playoffs for that first round. That top line was fantastic. That was the new school perfection line, if you will. That's what that line is turning into, the new Boston top line. But I wanted him to come to the Islanders. I think the contract's perfect. 8 years for a guy who's 28, which again, I agree with Cheris here. I thought he was much older, and I thought most of their team was much older. They have a very young team, and their core is at that prime level of 28, 27, 29. They're right there where Colorado is going to be a contender for the next 3 to 4 years. That's just how it's going to be. You could see them maybe turning into the next Tampa Bay Lightning, if you will. But I mean, getting $7 million per year, which is 56 in total over those 8 years, I think that's actually an underpay. I think for a guy who got 52 points in 54 games, that should be around, Ovechkin money, in my opinion, or what Ovechkin got in 9.5. I could have seen this deal going to $9 to $10 million, which is what it was rumored to be if he left Colorado. He took a hometown discount. And I think this makes Colorado a very scary team once again. And also re-signing Cale Makar is a big deal for them too. I might as well just jump right into it as well, talking about Colorado. 6 years, I would have given him more years. I would have done an 8x9. They did a 6x9. Look, we all know he's a top 3 defenseman in the National Hockey League. I don't think there's a question about that. We all know he could easily be the number 1. I think it's going to be between him and Adam Fox for the next few years of who the best defenseman will be. He had 36 assists, 44 points in 44 games. He was a plus 17, which I think is a big factor for defensemen, and he was 10-10 in the playoffs. And his career's just getting started. So I think, if you're Colorado, maybe you wanted a little bit longer term there for that Makar deal. I like the money value, though. I like the $9 million. But I think that's why they probably wanted that 8-year, just so for those extra 2 years, you could be paying him 9, because I could see him wanting in the not the near future, but towards the end of his contract being $11 million. So it's going to be very interesting, again, to see how Colorado gets on. I mean, they did lose some pieces, but for the most part, they kept the core together. So it's going to be very interesting to watch.
Yeah, I think Colorado, you're right on that. I've kind of long had them as my next Tampa, in that they're doing very well at drafting and developing players. I mean, we see, obviously, they have that young blue line, but then they also have guys coming up like Bowen Byram and Connor Timmins, who are going to be very good defensemen within the next couple seasons here. And then Alex Newhook, I think, should make their roster very soon as a third line center, maybe second line center in the next couple of years as well. So not only do they have the guys like McKinnon, by the way, I want to get to, because he's on the biggest steal of the contract ever. I mean, $6.3 million is insanity. Now, granted, after the 22-23 season, he'll get paid, I would think. But for now, yeah, he's on a steal. I think the Gabe Landeskog deal is also a steal. I mean, $7 million for your captain that's 28 and putting up pretty good numbers. I know that he hasn't been able to replicate that 34-goal season in 18-19, but he's still a very good player. And by all accounts, it seems like a good leader in the locker room. So I think that was a very fair price. Locking up Makar for $9 million is, again, a very fair price considering he's 22 years old. So, yeah, those are the moves I did like from Colorado. I'm sure we'll get into some of the stuff I didn't like from them, but they still seem absolutely stacked, and that they have that version of the perfection line with Landeskog, McKinnon. They also have Rantanen, Burakovsky, again, another guy that I think gets overlooked out there. And then their defense with Samuel Girard, Devon Taves, and Cale Makar. So they have a lot of elite guys. It's been kind of the question has been filling in that depth behind them. And I think that they're slowly starting to do that. But we will get into some of the losses that they had this year as well.
Yeah, Tim, you mentioned Landeskog was underpaid. How can you mention underpaid when the second best player in the league is only getting 6.3 and Seth Jones is getting 9.5? So it's ridiculous. And I think I saw McKinnon, which, by the way, if you haven't heard that story that Nikita Zadorov put out, did you guys see that on Twitter? And you didn't see that? It was him and his nutrition and how he pays I'll share it after. It was really, really funny. There's a bunch of memes out there on Instagram and stuff like that. But yeah, just how can you pay the second best player in the league $6.3 million? And then I saw on Twitter, he asked, I hope they underpay me again for my next contract. What? What? So, I mean, yeah, and the way that he's been able to turn kind of his career around from when Colorado's really bad, now they're one of the most elite teams, is remarkable. And Cale Makar, in my opinion, is the best skating defenseman in the league. And I thought he was going to get an 8x9. He got a 6x9. And, he's probably going to get an even bigger payday once this contract expires. So I don't know if you wanted to add any more about Denver. I mean, we'll circle back to them later. Tim?
I think something that I've seen a lot, and with certain teams, keeping a great leader in the locker room is very crucial. And I think getting a guy like Landeskog, for all we see is that he is a great leader. I mean, you got McKinnon, who you can tell is also a great leader with taking that pay cut and stuff. But I think this is also a hometown discount. You need leaders. I mean, look at Buffalo. Eichel was not a leader there, and that culture just crashed and burned. I mean, you can thank the Pagulas for that too. But you're looking at a true captain and a true leader in the National Hockey League, which is rare to find, a guy who's a true leader, but also can put up 30 goals. And I mean, Chris, to your point, how you're saying, he hasn't been back to that 34 goal season, which is true. I mean, it's been shortened seasons ever since, and he's been putting up 20 goals. And I think this year, I said it before, it's 52 or 54 games, 20 goals in 54 games. That's on pace for 30 goals in 82. So you're looking at a fantastic top line winger, but the most important part, in my opinion, is that he's a great leader, and you need great leaders to be successful in the National Hockey League.
Yeah, well, I do think we'll get to kind of that leadership thing. I didn't want to bring it up just yet, but my Philadelphia Flyers bringing in some leadership into the locker room there. And I think in any of the four major sports, you can't, and I think hockey the most, you can't undersell the amount that leadership matters in a locker room. And in hockey, just the most. I mean, you can tell when a locker room doesn't have leadership. It doesn't matter what kind of talent they have if they don't have leadership. Look at, like you said, a guy like Jack Eichel. Eichel has all the talent in the world, not really a leader, and it shows on that Buffalo team. Buffalo had some talent. I don't want to be like, they had no talent. They did have some. Obviously, I don't think they were a good team, but they had talent. They completely lacked any style of cohesiveness in their play and leadership. I mean, it showed. So they were one of those teams that was a part is greater than the sum of their whole. And that's what you get when you don't have a leader in the locker room, in my opinion.
Sam Reinhart, Chris. Sam Reinhart.
Man, I wanted the Sam Reinhart. I can't believe. I guess we'll get to the Flyers whenever you guys want. But yeah, I wanted Sam Reinhart, not the other one.
So we're going to head back east. We're going to talk about probably, I guess, well, I wouldn't say the most anticipated, but this one, obviously, another no-brainer. Taylor Hall comes back to the Boston Bruins, and I think this was one of the better contracts. He signed a 4-year, $6 million contract. He proved he could still play after a horrendous season in Buffalo. As soon as he got into Boston, he fit perfectly. He was great in the playoffs. He's better there as a second line player. I think that's because I think in New Jersey I think he was a first line player where they were good, but him in Boston, that takes a lot of load off of him, which was really, really important for him because, he's one of the best players in the league. So him as a second line player, him and David Krejci, although Krejci won't play this year because he's heading back to, he's going back Slovenia, Finland. I forget where he's from.
I think he's maybe the Czech Republic.
Yeah,
I'd have to check on that.
Czech Republic. Yes, Czech Republic. So I'm gonna pull up Paul's stats real fast when he was in Boston because he was really good. And why is NHL.com not working? Anyways, I think the Taylor Hall signing was excellent. He's 29. Would you have liked to see more or a little less? Maybe. Who knows?
I think it was perfect. I honestly think it was a perfect deal for him. He was looking for a home. You could tell he was looking for a spot to be for a while. He's been around the block. He's made the money. He just knows hey, I need a chance to win, and Boston's the perfect team for him to win. And Jacob, I know you're looking for the stats. I have them up. He had 8 goals, 14 points in 16 games with Boston. So he fit right in, made an immediate impact. I think, though, Krejci is a huge loss for him. I think those two had fantastic chemistry together on that second line. I don't know who's going to fill that second line center role. I don't know if you guys know, but I don't know if it's going to be as effective as it was with Krejci. And I think the $24 million in total is perfect. I really do. I don't think it's an overpay at all. And I don't even think it's an underpay. I think it's right on the money where it should be. We know it. Boston, the one thing that they were lacking was depth scoring. And to have this depth scorer, a absolute really good depth scorer, locked up for 4 years, you really have that chance to finally push for that cup again. I don't think, that perfection line's not getting younger, but they're not getting too much older. Marchand's playing at a fantastic pace right now. He is one of the best two-way forwards, and next to him is the best two-way forward, in my opinion, in Patrice Bergeron. And obviously you got the style and David Pastrnak there. That team is going to compete. I think they are going to be the best team in that Atlantic division. I don't see the Leafs being able to compete with them. I don't know. Maybe that's bold. I think that they are.
Happened to Tampa.
I honestly don't think Tampa is going to be able to compete with them on that regular season. I don't. Bold take, but I don't. I think Tampa Bay lost a little bit too much. And I think Boston, losing Krejci is big, yes, but I think their defense is getting more mature. They have a very young defensive core, and for them to have that full season, experience that playoffs, although maybe it was a disappointing playoffs, definitely for Hall it was, but I truly like this Taylor Hall signing, and I like this Boston team. I really think that they will be, here's my bold take of the year, I guess. I think they will be in the Eastern Conference Final this next year.
I'm going to have to give you a not so fast on that one. Look, I actually do agree with you in that I like what they've done a lot. And I think that this will really offset the big loss of David Krejci. I'm not ready to say that they're better or that they will be better than Tampa, even Toronto, because I actually really like what Toronto did for their solution in net. But the Taylor Hall contract is perfect. Yeah, I like the 4x6. Really no questions about that. And look, like you said, they're not getting a lot younger. Obviously, Krejci just left. Bergeron is 36. I think he'll be 37. Or no, he did just turn 36. So he'll be 36 this year. And he's at the end of his contract. I'm not sure. Obviously, he's still playing at a good level, but I'm not sure how much longer he's going to be around. Definitely not more than 3-4 years on his next contract, I would think. Marchand is also 33. So, they're not getting any younger with the guys that they have. So bringing in some more under 30 talent like Taylor Hall, who played very well for them down the stretch, is big. I really like that signing a lot. The only thing is that defensively, I continue to question them defensively. Last year said the same thing, but they've had guys step up. It'll be interesting to see what happens because next year they'll have to pay Charlie McAvoy and they'll have to pay Patrice Bergeron. So they do have a couple guys next year that could be leaving. So I don't want to say this is their last year competing, but they definitely don't have a huge window. They got a couple more years, and I think that's what this Taylor Hall deal is all about. For the next 4 years, that's kind of their window.
I'm shocked neither of you guys mentioned Tuukka Rask because he has not been signed yet. They signed Linus Ullmark to a big contract. He was actually, obviously, he didn't get the wins. His numbers were actually quite good this year in Buffalo. 20 games played, a .263 and a .917. For a team like Buffalo, and to have a GAA of 263, that's pretty good. Ullmark is a good goalie, but if Rask doesn't get re-signed, Tim, you said they're going to make the conference final. Ullmark-Swayman tandem, I'm not so sure about that. I was kind of shocked that Ullmark was given that $5 million per year. But then I realized, okay, Bruins might be moving on from Rask. So that was very surprising. I think there was a bit, I don't know. Do you guys think there was maybe a disconnect between Rask and, obviously there was a disconnect between him and fans, but, I'm Boston, because in order to be good, you have to have good goaltending. Can Linus Ullmark give you the goaltending that Tuukka Rask did for the past however many seasons he's been in Boston? I'm not sure about that. They also added Eric Haula, Nick Foligno, and Tomas Nosek. All will probably play bottom six roles, which I really liked. And they locked up Mike Riley, who is very underrated defensively. But yeah, that's my big question with Boston this year. So we could talk about how they locked out Paul. They did a good job there. And they also got Ullmark, but for now, right now, he's their new number one.
Well, he's going to have to be their number one because they're out of cap space. They only have a little bit over $1 million in cap space, so they're not signing another goalie. It's going to be Swayman and Ullmark. As to whether Ullmark can handle it, it'll be tough. Look, I don't think you're going to be able to replace the goaltender tandem that they've had for a while now in Boston. But, I'm not sure that it'll be too big of a downgrade. I mean, getting young in net is huge. I do think this is kind of their plan for years to come in net, is that they're going to have Ullmark and Swayman for the next 4 or 5, however many years. I don't know. I'm not sure that it's going to be enough to cover the loss of Tuukka Rask. Now, that being said, like you were saying, their defense is underrated. Mike Riley, really underrated defenseman. I do like Charlie McAvoy a lot. Matt Grzelcyk has been actually really good for them. Jeremy Lauzon was a big loss for them, I think, in the expansion draft. He was one that I didn't really have a high expectation for, but really came through defensively. So, yeah, there's going to be some adjustment there in Boston. I do think their defense and goaltending situation is good, but not quite as strong as it was. That's kind of my overall take.
I think Rask, it's a loss. I think obviously it is, but I mean, we saw how he played down the stretch in the playoffs. And I mean, you can ask any Boston fan how they felt about him in that second round versus the Islanders. I'm a fan of Linus Ullmark. I always have been. I love what he did in Buffalo. He was standing on his head out there. He was doing everything he could just to keep them in games, and he did that. He did a fantastic job. I remember his rookie season was fantastic. He gave Buffalo, he stole some games for him. And now playing in front of a 10 times better defense. I also love for Boston, Brandon Carlo. I think he's a very also underrated defenseman, and I think he's got a lot of talent. And I also like Connor Clifton. I think he's another younger guy, but I think more development will make him great. But, I mean, it's going to be tough. I do agree with that. And Rask is going to be a loss. I just think with them getting the depth scoring of Hall as well as the other pieces, I don't know if it's going to matter too much, because of the fact that they didn't have depth scoring at all these past 2-3 years. And they were still able to make deep runs. I mean, when they went to the Cup against St. Louis, I didn't think they had much depth, if any, So it's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out. I just have a lot of faith in, obviously, the perfection line, but as well as that depth scoring and that young defense for Boston.
So if I'm not missing any no-brainer contracts, I'm going to add a segment to this podcast. We're going to talk about the busiest teams, and I'm thinking of 2 teams, the Philadelphia Flyers and the Chicago Blackhawks. We're going to talk about those 2 teams now. Let's get this out of the way. Chris, the floor is now yours. Please speak on the Philadelphia Flyers. Are they winners? Are they losers? What are your thoughts on the acquisitions? They just re-signed Carter Hart. He's hoping to bounce back. This team, man, they led the league in goals against, 3.52. Analytics, I'm not sure, because there's some analytics, is that in large due to goaltending or the defense? But I think the eye test makes it pretty clear that it was the defense. Chuck Fletcher, address that. The floor is yours.
Well, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly this offseason for the Flyers. I think I'll start with the good. I loved the Ellis trade. Ellis, well, I'll start with the Ellis trade, but first of all, this is kind of a running theme. He was the assistant captain in Nashville next year. Keep that in mind for some of the later guys that I'll talk about. I like his contract, 6.25 for the next next several years. He's signed through the 26-27 season. 30 years old right now, so he's in his prime. I like the contract a lot. He's been very good with Nashville, been one of their best defensemen on the top pairing, I believe, with Roman Josi. So I think he'll fit in very well with Provorov. Provorov is really, I think he's a good number 2 in that he needs somebody else to play off of, and he did not have that at all last year. And you can see his play really suffered because of that. So I fully expect, because of Ellis coming in, I expect Provorov to have a bounce back year. And that's a big part of the reason why the Flyers do this deal. Now, trading away Nolan Patrick, yes, I know he was a big first-round pick, 2nd overall a couple years ago. He's got that concussion history, and that's really hard to shake. I mean, that's not really through any fault of his own. It's just kind of unfortunate the way things have turned out for him. I think the Flyers had to do this deal. There were some reports that he didn't like the pressure of playing in Philadelphia, which, it's a lot of pressure playing in Philadelphia in front of that fan base. But I get the trade from that standpoint. Phil Myers is going to be a good defenseman. The fact that they got him undrafted is crazy because I think he has second pairing D-man upside. I know he's been off and on a lot. I think he'll do well in Nashville. Overall, I think that's a great trade, though, for the Flyers. So I'll start with that. Moving on to the bad. Well, actually, I'll stick with the good for one more because I think Keith Yandel was also a good signing, and Cam Atkinson. Cam Atkinson was the assistant captain in Columbus. Again, more leadership. Flyers really lacked leadership in the locker room, in my opinion. I love Giroux, and I do think he's a good leader, but I think the rest of the locker room was kind of weak. And Cam Atkinson, when I tell you every interview that I see with this guy, he's such a Philly guy. Like, I already love him. Like, he just seems like he's so far in on the culture already. Like, I know we talk about Tim Rogers, culture changer in PSSN. I think Cam Atkinson feels like a culture kind of guy. Whether or not he's a huge upgrade over Voracek, I don't know, but he's cheaper. And personally, he's probably a lot easier. I love Jake, and he's got his own quirks and stuff, but Cam Atkinson seems like such a lovable guy. I cannot wait to get him in this locker room. And he always, by the way, torched the Flyers whenever they played Columbus. So great to have him. And then I do like Keith Yandel a lot. I think he'll fit perfectly with Braun. Braun is more of a stay-at-home defenseman. Yandel more of an offensive D-man. I think they balance out pretty well on the second pairing. And they got Yandel for a very cheap $900,000 contract. And he's very consistent. I mean, he almost never gets hurt, always in the lineup. Like that kind of guy on this team. Also adds some toughness, I think, which the Flyers do need. Now, speaking of toughness and sandpaper, and the Flyers do need that, they traded for Rasmus Ristolainen. Now, look, Ristolainen's a pain to play against. Like, I get it. Like, he's all over the ice, it feels like, for better or worse. And like I said before, very tough guy to play against. Very, one of those sandpaper guys that the Flyers did not have. But analytically, he is horrible. Like, he is like, I'm just gonna flat out say, like, he's worse than Ghost analytically. Like, the fact that they gave up a first and a second for that is disgusting. Like, look, maybe they get him into the system, and I'm assuming this is why. They see something that they think they can fix in him. He'll come into the system and turn into the player everybody thought he would be when he was drafted. And you know what? If that's the case, awesome. Great job, Chuck. On paper right now, it's hard to defend. Like, I don't know how you can. Like, he's just not good. Like, he has the raw. He's the kind of player that he's tooled up and that he has the raw tools. He's a fast guy. I think he's got a good shot. He's a very tough player, but he just makes some of the worst decisions you'll ever see with the puck. And, that was the Flyers' problem all last year. So it's like, I don't get the trade. Maybe they think they can fix something with him. If they do, then great. Awesome. I just have a big question mark with him. Same with Martin Jones. Martin Jones is a guy that with San Jose was good a couple years ago. The mid-2010s, he was great up until about the 2018-19 season and has posted 3 straight seasons with an .896 save percentage. Now, he's younger, which I guess is good. You know, Elliott has been banged up a lot, especially last year. He was banged up for a bit, I believe. So, yeah, it's good that they went with a younger backup there. I don't know if they see something they can fix in him. That's kind of my question. Look, the Flyers goaltending coach, Kim Dillabaugh, clearly has his hands full with Carter Hart. I do think that Carter Hart's the kind of guy that hopefully has been working all year and they can fix him. But do you want to take on another goaltending project right now that you have to fix when you're already focusing on your young goaltender Hart? In my mind, no. I just want a guy that I can plug in and play. So, again, in my mind, they've got 3 pretty good players in Yandel, in Atkinson, and in Ellis. Jones and Ristolainen are huge question marks.
Yeah, you summed it up. And not only did you give away a first-round pick for Ristolainen, you gave away the 13th overall selection in this year's draft?
Yeah, I believe it was 13th. I mean, granted, like I said about the leadership, Ristolainen also wore the A in Buffalo. So now they have 3 more assistant captains they just brought in. So clearly Chuck did see that there might have been a leadership issue in the locker room and is trying to address that. I think the thing is I think Coots and G are not the most vocal guys. Ristolainen and Atkinson and Hayes are all very vocal guys and very much locker room guys. So the locker room will be a lot of fun. I don't know how much fun the team will be, but the locker room will be very fun.
I don't think I can add anything. I think that honestly, I would have paid money to watch that. That was fantastic. People of YouTube, you are so lucky to get this for free. That was an absolute show. Chris, thank you. Thank you for that. And thank you for calling me a culture changer. We all believed it.
Oh,
so
that was great.
But one thing I do want to touch on here is about Ristolainen. If he was playing golf, by the way, he would be fantastic because his plus minus is horrendous. I mean, he was a minus 18 last year. I think I could be wrong here, but I believe in 18-19, he was a minus 41. What? You traded for that? I mean, I couldn't believe it, but Chris touched on everything. I don't know if I could touch on anything else there. That was just fantastic. That's all I can say is that was fantastic.
When I originally saw the trade, in all honesty, I deleted the tweet, but I was like, oh my God, Chuck fleeced them because I thought we were getting the picks in return. So I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, wow, what a move by Chuck to buy this guy and get picks. And then I see we gave up a first and a second, and I was like, what? Like, what did you just do? Like, look, I get that I'm a prospect hoarder and that like I love hanging on to picks and prospects and stuff. So selling picks was already gonna, make me mad. But for Rasmus Ristolainen, like, are you kidding me? Like, he's a Walmart version of Shane Gostisbehere. Like, I don't get it. Like, I don't get why we're getting clearance rack Shane Gostisbehere in here for more expensive. Like, look, hopefully they can fix him, and this is just a freezing cold take exposed here. But like at the moment, like if you look, I forget what the account is on Twitter that tweets out all the analytics stuff behind it. And he's like in the bottom 10% for wins above replacement. Like, it was a joke. Like, look, I get Ristolainen always, again, another one of those guys, played very well against the Flyers. Does not mean they're good if they play well against the Flyers. Curtis Lazar played very well against the Flyers. Doesn't mean he is a very good player.
Yeah, that was a treat to watch. I'll be watching that on repeat a fair amount after this is posted. But I want to touch on the goaltending because if Carter Hart has another down year, you're asking Martin Jones to play 30, maybe 40 games. Can Martin Jones do that? Like, he had an 896 and a 3-something goals against. Carter Hart had a 4-something goals against, and the Flyers led the league in goals against per game. So that's really going to be what's going to hold them back from making the playoffs. If they could fix their defense, if Ryan Ellis, right, great signing, great two-way defenseman. If Ristolainen gets fixed, if they could really clean up their entire system, then the goaltending will be great and Carter Hart will be what we all expect him to be. But I'm not so sure about that. I think the Flyers and Hart will have a better season, no question about it. But if they don't, I'm not sure what Alain Vigneault and the rest of the coaching and management is going to do. So that even last year, the forwards were very good. They're very good, solid players. Defense, Gustafsson, he's gone. So, and we know what Provorov can do. And what I really want to see more of is Cam York, because I remember watching his debut against the Capitals. He was phenomenal. So that's why, maybe bringing in a guy like Yandel, I liked the signing. I think it was a cheap contract, obviously. But, is Cam York going to play? And I think he should be playing because he is a very good two-way defenseman. So you could add one last thing about the Flyers, because I do want to talk about the Chicago Blackhawks because they were another busy team.
Yeah, well, I think you touched on Martin Jones. I mean, look, he's been a sieve the last 2 years. I mean, there's no question about it. It hasn't been good. But I don't know. I don't know if he'll be able to fill in the backup role for Carter Hart. I do think Hart bounces back, though. I really do. And I think York maybe starts in Lehigh, but I think at some point in the season he has to be in this starting lineup as a second pairing defenseman. I would think maybe they pair him with Yandel. I'm not sure, but he should be in the starting lineup. You're right.
All right. With that, we're going to head back out west. The Chicago Blackhawks. Boy, oh boy, Stan Bowman had his hands full. The biggest splash, two big splashes were, let's first talk about Seth Jones, because analytically he was terrible in Columbus. I think this is one of those situations where it was more the team rather than Jones, because I think Jones is a future Norris Trophy winner. He is a very good player. And I think he has top 5 D potential, and I think he was 1 year when Columbus was really good. But he had a very bad year. And Stan Bowman dropped the hammer and gave him an 8-year, $9.5 million contract. And he had 1 year left on his deal. And I think Seth Jones wanted a long-term extension, or else he wasn't going to play. So, I mean, Chicago's on the up. There's no question about it. And I do think they actually make the playoffs this year. But, Chicago gives up tons of shots. Seth Jones was not very good with Columbus. Is Seth Jones going to, I think he'll help the Chicago defense. But is that going to give their goalies, Kevin Lankinen and Marc-Andre Fleury, I'm trying to think of a good way to word this, but I question the Seth Jones contract, really, because they have a very important free agents that they have to sign during Jones's tenure. Alex DeBrincat being one of them. He has 2 more years left on his deal. Dylan Strome has 1. Kubalik has 1. So it's lots of questions headed in Chicago. So, Tim, why don't we start with you on this one? What do you think of the Jones deal?
I think you kind of said it yourself. I think it was more the team. I just don't think Columbus was really all there last year. I think that locker room was so divided with Torts as the head coach and just the players in the locker room. I just think there was really no chemistry in that locker room for anybody to get going. But you also said it too, who he's playing in front of. Marc-Andre Fleury is their goalie. I think that is going to play a huge factor for them in making the playoffs. And I agree with you, Jacob. I do think they will make the playoffs as well. Do I think the contract's good? No. But you're looking at DeBrincat's contract ending in 2 years. So is Taves and Patrick Kane. So maybe you're hoping that one of those two takes a pay cut for DeBrincat to get more money. I don't really know what Chicago's kind of thinking there. I think overall, though, they are winners of this free agency. I think getting Marc-Andre Fleury for nothing is amazing, in my opinion. I mean, I love the Duncan Keith trade. I think that was amazing for them. And I really like them just, you could tell they're just trying to become a better team of like a locker room group of people. You can tell they're just trying to, I mean, they're getting Taves back, which is huge in my opinion. I believe they are trying to trade Calvin DeHaan as well, though, to get more cap space. I love Caleb Jones on their team. I think they are a very good, talented team, and I think they have a real shot of making the playoffs, and not just making it, but making a run in the playoffs. And the reason I say that is they're veterans. I mean, Kane and Taves have done it before. You know they have. Patrick Kane is one of the clutchest players in the playoffs. There's a reason Chris knows it. He doesn't want me to say it, but he knows how clutch Patrick Kane truly is. He did it in Philly. That's not an easy place to do it in. So I really think that this Chicago team, they won. They won this offseason for sure. And I think it's going to help them in the right direction. It's going to be interesting to see what Dylan Strome does. I want to see how he does this year. And I also want to see how DeBrincat does this year. And I think the biggest question mark is Jonathan Taves. How is he going to come back from that injury? What is it going to look like? So I'm pretty excited for this team, though.
Well, yeah, I'm excited for this team. And what's really interesting is that, by the way, they have some other guys like Kirby Doc will be back, or at least he should be back, I think, and Alex Nylander, who are very good players as well. So they've been able to do this weird kind of rebuild where they haven't been like didn't tank for too long, but they've been able to get competitive towards the end of Patrick Kane and Jonathan Taves, I guess, tenure. Like you look at Kane and Taves, they're still only 32 and 33. Like I'm pretty sure they've been around for like 2 decades, it feels like, but they're still only in their, low 30s. Like they still theoretically can build their next core kind of around those guys. So I like what they've done supplementing Kane and Taves with the young lineup of DeBrincat, Doc, Nylander, Strome is another one. Brett Connolly, I know he's 29, but he's still pretty good as well. So they've got that young talent that they're bringing in to kind of give Kane and Taves that last run that they deserve. So I do kind of like that. Seth Jones' contract, look, it's a lot of money, and I do think Seth Jones just had a really bad year in Columbus. Look, it's hard to play well when you physically and mentally want out and have checked out of a team. So I think that's kind of what was going on there. But even then, the contract is still probably a lot. But I guess it doesn't matter because, like, if you look, and we'll compare it later to some of the other defensive contracts given out this year, it's not the worst one. Like, trust us, it's not the worst defenseman contract given this year.
Yeah, Chicago was tied for first with Buffalo in shots against per game. That was 33.7 for worst in the league. And with Seth Jones and the year he had, they brought in Jake McCabe, who I think is an underrated defenseman. He was actually very good in Buffalo. So before, we're still lining, he was bad because he was in Buffalo. Jake McCabe was also in Buffalo, and he was very good defensively. And I like that addition too. So there's no question Chicago will be better. Marc-Andre Fleury and Kevin Lankinen are a very strong duo. And I want to touch on Lankinen for a bit. Kevin Lankinen was 5th in save percentage from January 13th, the start of the season, to February 1st. He was 6-3-1. He was terrific. And then they bring in Fleury. I think what Stan Bowman and the management think is, okay, we had a very successful season last year. Let's try and build off that season by saying, okay, our rebuild is kind of done. So let's bring in guys like Jones, Tyler Johnson, guys like that to help us win and and Fleury to be a successful organization again. There were questions of Fleury wanting to play in Chicago because, the trade was shocking. But I think he'll fit in well. And he's just coming off a Vezina winning season. If Chicago, breaks down defensively, which they do a lot, I think Fleury will bail them out. Maybe a little bit less than what he did, in Vegas. But yeah, they're definitely on the up, and they still have a very good prospect pool. But they were busy this year, and they lost Pius Suter, which is, that, in my opinion, I think that's a big loss because he had a really good season. He went to Detroit. They lost Zadorov. They had to get rid of that contract. Jahan, I wouldn't be surprised if they move him because they do have good defensive prospects. Ian Mitchell, I think he had some time this year. I like Philip Kurashev as a forward. I think they moved Gaudette, cap friendly. Isn't showing that. But yeah, they're set, and I think they're making a run. They're going to try and make a run this year. They're in a very good Central Division, so they'll probably be in a wild card spot. But yeah, boy, I was shocked. First, I saw Jones. I'm like, what? 8 years? At first, it was reported 7, then 9, and then 8. So yeah, he went from 5.4 to 9.5. But yeah, I'm with you guys. Chicago, I think, is one of the winners. But they have 0 cap space. It's going to be interesting to see where they go from there. So now that if you guys don't want to add anything, if you guys want to add anything about both those teams.
Well, I do want to say that our very own Evan 17 Barrett could possibly challenge for a spot there on the center role in the bottom 6. I mean, behind Doc and Taves, I'm not really sure. Right now, it looks like on Daily Faceoff for the line combos is Henrik Bjorkstrom and Kahira? Not even sure. Okay, that's how you pronounce it. I think Barrett could very well challenge for a roll out of camp there in the bottom 6. So would be pretty cool to see that happen.
Interesting. I think I'll play in the next couple of years, but we'll see. So now we're going to go. We're at 53 minutes. We'll maybe make this quick. The winners and the losers. Let's start with the losers. We touched on Colorado, so we're going to head out to Raleigh. Boy, oh boy. They are big-time losers. First, they lost Dougie Hamilton, which honestly was kind of expected because they weren't really – the negotiations weren't going well. They traded Alex Nedeljkovic, their supposed goalie of the future, which, looking into it, it did kind of make sense from a hockey standpoint, from a business side, because he had arbitration rights. He was asking for a lot. And with the guys that Carolina has to sign, Svechnikov being one of them, they didn't feel that Nedeljkovic was a big part of the core, if you know what I mean. So, but they had some controversial additions. Anthony DeAngelo signs a 1-year deal. That didn't sit very well. So what are you guys' thoughts on Carolina? I still think they're a strong team. I think they still have a good defense. Jacob Slavin is good. Brett Pesce's good. Ian Cole, I like that addition. Ethan Bear is also very good. So their top 4 is good. After that, it's a little bit in the question. Goaltending is also another question. So what are your takes on the Carolina Hurricanes, and are they weak? They're definitely weaker, but are they weak enough that they would miss the playoffs?
I don't know if they're going to miss the playoffs, but they're going to be a wild card bubble team, if you will. I hate what they did with the goaltending. I think that was the worst handled situation for them. I do not like Freddie Anderson. I don't think he's been healthy enough for you to give him $4.5 million a year. And we saw it in Toronto. He lost his starting job to Jack Campbell. He lost it straight up. And, I mean, don't get me wrong, Jack Campbell's a fantastic goalie, but Toronto put a lot of faith into Freddie Anderson, and he didn't perform. He didn't get him a playoff series win. He didn't. And I don't know if he's going to be able to do that with Carolina. I don't like Antti Ranta that much. I think he's a good backup, but I don't know if he's going to have to be just a backup with the way that Freddie Anderson has had his injuries. I don't know if that's going to be detrimental to this Carolina team.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we all know about Tony DeAngelo. I don't think there's much to say about that other than, what are you doing? But, I mean, if anybody, I'll give Carolina some credit here. Rod Brindamore is a fantastic coach. And if he's there, he might be able to set the guy straight, but that's a big might and a big maybe. I still think with Brindamore, they could be a playoff team. I just don't like them. I don't think they will. I think they're going to miss out. I think there's too much young depth in the Metropolitan Division with New Jersey, with the Rangers, with the Flyers. I don't think they're considered now one of those teams. It's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, look, Carolina, I think, has actually typically in the last couple of years been a very smart organization. I mean, I love the way they've drafted. They've consistently drafted very well and have kept that prospect pipeline, which I care very much about, well stocked. But what kind of a dumpster fire was this? You can't tell me that the same front office that has been running this team so well the last couple of years ran this offseason. Sure, I get Dougie Hamilton's expensive, fine, whatever. Peter Mrazek, okay, fine, but I don't know. The Nedeljkovic, look, I get that he was going to have to get paid, but Detroit, I believe, I got to go look up that contract, paid him what, $3 million for 2 years. I mean, I don't know. You can't tell me Carolina couldn't have paid him that. So they got worse in goal. And by the way, I believe in terms of how much they spent in goal, they had Mrazek, Reimer, Nedeljkovic last year. Now they have Frederik Andersen and Ranta, who are far worse for only $300,000 in savings. So they basically paid the same amount of money and are worse. So I hated those moves. Like I said about Dougie Hamilton, yeah, he's expensive, whatever. Tony DeAngelo's a bum. I'm sorry, but there's so many other defensemen you can find than Tony DeAngelo fraud, okay, to fill in that role than this guy. I mean, look, that locker room has been very good. They've been one of the most fun teams to watch. And then you bring this guy in there, I don't understand it. Talk about how to ruin a locker room in one move. That's what they've done. I mean, in fact, I was talking to one of my friends who's a Canes fan, and I was saying, how many games do you give this guy in a Canes uniform before he self-destructs? I would put the over-under at 20. I genuinely think he appears in 20 games with the team and then is done. That move is horrible to me. They haven't done anything significantly to get better. I mean, you look at the guys that they lost. I thought Jake Bean was great. They lost him. Morgan Geekie, another young guy that I liked, lost him. Warren Fogley lost him. So I don't see how they've gotten any better. I mean, I think they've gotten significantly worse. And if you look at The Athletic, Dom from The Athletic, who's one of their hockey writers, had them at losing 6 wins, by far the most of any team this offseason. So they are one of the losers. In fact, they are the loser of the offseason for me.
Yeah, there's no question about it. I mean, Tony DeAngelo, I think he said in his interview, the reason why there was some behavioral issues because of my competitive natures. I don't buy any of that. Like, yeah, you could still try very hard and not be, a jerk in the locker room.
Yeah. I mean, like, listen, apparently you only try hard now. If you fight your goalie, that's when you know you're trying hard. Okay, maybe that's the Flyers' problem this year. We didn't have anybody fight our goalie, and I guess we weren't trying hard enough. Like, what kind of a lame excuse was that? Like, the dude could have come up with literally anything else, and he comes up with that. Like, that was like the Michael Scott line when he's like, "What are my flaws? I care too much. I try too hard." That was that. He literally pulled a Michael Scott quote and inserted that for his flaws. Like, that's unbelievable. But back to you.
Yeah. And Tim, you mentioned, the health issues with the goalies. Ronta has also had lots of health issues. Ronta is actually a very good goalie when he's healthy, but he's always had injury issues, and that might set them back. So, they didn't want to pay Nedeljkovic that because I saw he has played in front of elite teams his entire career. Can he do that again? Can he have another Calder season? Who knows? I think he can down the road, and I think Detroit took advantage of that. And they made a good move. But, Don Waddell, their GM, said, we're in win now mode, so we need experience. You need some experience, but, you don't want to give away your your future for that. They have Jordan Staal, who's 32, who is their oldest player, or was their oldest player before they got Ronta and Ian Cole. All of those guys are 32 as well. So, yeah, but again, I still think they're good, but if anyone can hold Tony DeAngelo tight, it's Rod Brindamore. He won't take anything. It's going to be maybe a zero tolerance thing. But all offensive, Tony DeAngelo is a great offensive defenseman. He is a very good offensive defenseman. There's no question about it. Defensively, Tim, remember that goal with Barzell where he just went inside out on him? So,
of course I remember that goal. Great moment.
Great moment. So, yeah, I don't know. It's definitely up in the air. There's no question about it. So yeah, they're one of the losers. I mean, they have $12 million in cap right now. A lot of that's going to go to Svechnikov, who kind of didn't really do great in the playoffs. But yeah, that was kind of shocking, the moves that Carolina made. So we're going to go back to Colorado. They are another loser. Philip Grubauer goes to the Seattle Kraken. What is it with teams and trading their Vezina goalies? Like, come on. Except for obviously Vasilevsky in Tampa Bay. Philip Grubauer signed a 6-year deal with the Seattle Kraken. He's now their number one, forcing Vitek Vanacek back to Washington. Seattle, their team in general, their forwards aren't great. Their defense is good, and their goaltending just got a lot better. And they're in the Pacific Division, the weakest division in hockey. They did address some of that. I like the addition of Jaden Schwartz. But Colorado, I'm going off track here, to lose your goalie, and I think they had I think $12 million in cap. I think this was after they signed Makar and Landeskog. They could have easily signed Philip Grubauer. They did get Darcy Kemper, who I think is still good. It's not like Grubauer. So now it's a Kemper-Francouz tandem. And Francouz has another guy who's had a tough time staying healthy.
I think it's tough for Colorado to lose a guy like Grubauer because I believe Kemper is making $3.5 million and they have $2.5 in cap space. That was plenty enough to bring back Philip Grubauer. There was no reason that you couldn't bring him back. I mean, I feel like he would have taken a discount to a home hometown discount, if you will, to stay with Colorado. And even if it wasn't too much of a discount, 5.9 per year is not bad at all for a guy who was nominated for the Vezina Trophy. I think, obviously, for Seattle, this is a win. I don't think there's a question about that. And I think another key piece is losing Brandon Saad. I think that is going to hurt that depth scoring for them. I think Chris said it earlier, Burakovsky is great. Nazem Kadri, if he can stay in the lineup, is great. Instead of trying to chop people's heads off. But if you look at this roster, on paper, they're still one of the best teams in the league. I don't think there's really a question about that. So is it a loss? Absolutely. Is it as big as people make it sound? Personally, I don't think so. I think Kemper is a very good replacement. Is he Grubauer level? No. But I think playing in front of that defense, you're going to be just fine. I think Devon Toews has become one of the best shutdown defensemen in the league. I really do believe that. I think Cale Makar is ridiculous, as we all do. And I love Samuel Girard. I'm a big fan of Ryan Murray as well.
Yeah.
I think that was a fantastic signing by them. They did lose Ryan Graves to New Jersey, which is definitely a blow as well. And I honestly think that's the biggest blow for them. I think Ryan Graves is easily a top pair defenseman in the National Hockey League. You know, that was Colorado's strength. They had 4 defensemen that anybody could say, yeah, they could play on the top line. And I mean, they lose 1, so now they have 3. It's a very good situation for Colorado to be in with the youth that they have. I think Kemper is only, I want to say, 31. Which for goalies, you know, that's not too bad. That's not too bad at all. But is it a loss this offseason? Technically, yes. But I think overall, it's not as bad as people think.
Yeah, it's definitely a loss this offseason, but I don't hate what they did. Now, yeah, I agree that Philip Grubauer was way cheaper than I expected. I mean, like, are you kidding me? I would have taken Philip Grubauer for that money in a second. Like, I can't believe Seattle only paid him $5.9 million for that many years to sign him. But Colorado is kind of cash strapped right now. I mean, they have a bunch of guys that they're going to have to re-sign. Burakovsky's a free agent after this year. Kadri, if they want to keep him as a free agent after this year. I believe they got a couple other RFAs coming up too. So, you know, it's not like they have a ton of money. And oh, by the way, they have to re-sign McKinnon after the 22-23 season. So a lot of this, I think, was looking down the road. That's why they didn't sign Grubauer. That's why they traded Graves and just trying to maximize their money. And I think they did that a decent enough job of doing that. I mean, Kemper, yeah, he's not quite as good in goal as what they had before in Grubauer, but Kemper's a pretty good goalie. His issue has been staying healthy. And if he can stay healthy, which has not been easy for Colorado goaltenders the last couple of years, then, yeah, I think they'll be very good. I mean, same with Francouz. Francouz has been a very good backup, has not stayed healthy for the most part. Actually did stay healthy last year. Or not last year, the year before, but last year was not healthy. So, again, it's going to be key. They have to keep Kemper and Francouz healthy. The defense will do its job. I know they lost Graves. They're still amazing. The forward depth is still pretty good as well. So, yeah, they lost a couple key players in Grubauer. Also, Brandon Saad. I really liked Saad. I think that might be their biggest loss. Graves is, you know, another good defenseman. They did actually trade away Timmins. So yeah, they lost a couple of good pieces, but overall, I don't think that they're terribly worse. I think Carolina lost the offseason much more than Colorado did.
With that, we're gonna head to Jersey. We're gonna talk about the winners now. Probably the winners of the offseason, because they still have they have 12 million in cap space, and they spent a lot of money, and they actually just re-signed Yanni Kokkonen to a 2-year deal. So let's talk about Dougie Hamilton. probably the, biggest defenseman on the market. Boy, 8 years at $9 million. Wow. And I'm kind of surprised that they haven't dumped Subban's contract yet, but have to. They also signed Tomas Tatar, which I love. He can add a scoring winner. He's a scoring winger, which New Jersey needed desperately. They also added Jonathan Bernier. They got him from Detroit. Yes, they got him from Detroit. They re-signed Yegor Sharangovich, who I love, and they signed today Yanni Kuokkanen. So the Devils, they added Ryan Graves. So their defense is good. Their forwards are good, but they're not quite there yet because they're in a tough Metropolitan Division. So what do we make of Dougie Hamilton? And the speculation, he wasn't great in the playoffs with Carolina, but he's still a top 10 defenseman in the league.
I think it's a really good deal for New Jersey, and I love this New Jersey Devils defense. I think their defense is very good. I love Dougie Hamilton, obviously. He had great numbers last year besides the playoffs, obviously, but 32 assists, 42 points in 55 games. Right-handed defensemen in the National Hockey League are very hard to find. And to get one like Dougie Hamilton, is it a bit of an overpay? Only time will tell. He is 28 years old, which isn't too bad for defensemen. And it was much needed for New Jersey. We saw last year that their defense was lacking. I don't think there was a question about that. But if you're looking at the people that they got, Ryan Graves, to me, was a fantastic addition for them. He was a player that I thought was Colorado's one of their best defensemen. And I love his numbers. I love his playing style. And then you have Damon Severson, who I think could still be something. Ty Smith, who was fantastic. You have a serious, great defensive core. And that's what you need for Mackenzie Blackwood. If you want Mackenzie Blackwood to develop, you're going to need to put good defensemen in front of him. And I think that's what New Jersey have done. I would not be surprised, too, if you see New Jersey trade for another defenseman. I wouldn't be surprised if they trade for another forward. I don't think they're done yet. I think with that 12, I think it's actually 13 million because I think it's like 12.9. So $13 million in cap space. Yeah. I know they're saving up, obviously, for the Hughes contract. I know his contract ends, I believe this year his rookie deal ends. And they also have Jesper Bogquist, who I also think is great. They have Jesper Bratt and Miles Wood that they have to re-sign. But Thomas Tatar, I think, was a great signing. I love the $4.5 million deal. I think that's perfect. And Jonathan Bernier, just in case Mackenzie Blackwood has a shaky year, you have a very solid guy who's been proven in the National Hockey League. He's done it all around the league. He just did it, in Detroit. He was fantastic in Toronto, though. I loved how he played in Toronto. That was back in 15-16, where he, was also a part of that historic loss to Boston in Game 7, the first one. But I really like the additions of this New Jersey team. And like Jacob, you said, they're not there yet. And I think partially that's due to the division they're in. I think they're just in such a great division that they're not there yet. But this is a huge step in the right direction for them and a very much needed step for them. Ever since Lamoriello left, their identity was kind of shaken up a bit. They didn't really know where they were going with the team. They finally look like they know what they're doing. They did the rebuild and they did it right. And I really like this team.
Yeah, I really like this Devils team too. Like you said, they're not quite there yet. I think they still need help in terms of their forward depth, and it is coming. I've liked their drafts recently. Alexander Holtz from their last draft looked awesome. He was really good in World Juniors last year. Dawson Mercer, another one that's looked really good. So they do have some forward help coming, some young guys coming up that I think maybe not this year, but in the next couple of years will really help them get to that next level. But for now, they look pretty good. Dougie Hamilton, yeah, it's a big contract, but again, who else does Jersey have to pay? So they could absolutely afford that contract. It was a great move for them. The PK Subban contract is coming off the books after this year. That's $9 million that they'll have to spend next year. But for now, Graves and Hamilton should be pretty good as the top pairing in Jersey. And then, by the way, they still have Ty Smith, who I really liked last year. He's only 21 years old, and I think he's going to keep developing as we saw last year. They do have even more defensemen that might start this year as well, in Riley Walsh and Kevin Ball. So they do have a bunch of guys that I think I would like to see start their rookie season this year. They're not far off. They do need some depth. They have the high-end defenseman now in Dougie Hamilton. They have some good wingers. Nico Hischier, obviously a good center. And then they have Tomas Tatar. It was a big get for them at 4.5 a year for 2 years. They're not that far off. You can kind of see what they're building. I like the young core is basically going to be built around Hischier. Pavel Zacha had a really good year last year. Sharon Govich had a really good year last year. And then Jesper Boquist and Jack Hughes. So those are kind of the couple guys that they'll build around in their young 20s. I would say they're a step behind where the Rangers are at in terms of the rebuild, but the Rangers went haywire this year.
Yeah.
So I still think that they're towards the bottom of the division. I think Columbus is now the worst team in the division, but give them another like 2 or 3 years, and I do think they'll really be battling for a division playoff spot as teams like Pittsburgh start to kind of fall out of things.
Yeah, and we'll make it quick because this is turning into a very long podcast. We're almost at, I think, an hour 20. I did start the clock a little late, but it's all good. So we'll talk about Seattle because I think they're another winner. There was a lot of signings today. Shesterkin just got signed. I'm just throwing names. Shesterkin. I heard maybe Sorokin might get signed soon. But yeah, so let's talk about Seattle, the newest franchise. They were also another winner, and they have lots of cap space. They have $9 million in cap. That wouldn't happen if they didn't take Carey Price in the expansion draft. Their goaltending is solid. We agree with that with Grubauer and Drieger. Their defense is also very good. That Vince Dunn signing was great. Their forwards are a bit more of a question, but yeah, I think they're definitely one of the winners. They signed guys like Marcus Johansson, Jaden Schwartz. So I think Schwartz is going to be one of their first line players, or at least a top 6 left wing. Yanni Gord is very versatile. Wenberg, I also like Tanev, McCann, guys like that. So what do we make of the Seattle Kraken? And honestly, they could be sneaky good because, again, the Pacific Division is not very good. So, yeah, what do we make of them?
I think the moves they made were perfect. And I think that could push them into a playoff spot, maybe. I think it's kind of like what you said, just based on the division. But I think the Vince Dunn deal was perfect. 2 years, $4 million per. That's an absolute steal for me. I think Vince Dunn is one of the best defensemen in the National Hockey League right now. And I think that Seattle was able to take him and get him for fairly cheap, I would say, in my opinion. We already talked about the Grubauer deal. I think this makes that goalie tandem a top 5 goalie tandem in the National Hockey League between Grubauer and Drieger. I really do. I think Drieger had a fantastic year. I couldn't believe Florida wanted to get rid of him. I don't know if they really had a choice, though, with Bobrovsky and stuff like that.
Spencer Knight coming up.
Well, that is true, too. And I believe Spencer Knight will be maybe opening night starter for them. I think he should be. But I really like Grubauer, and I really like Drieger. And I think Grubauer is going to be great for Drieger to help mentor him a little bit, show him the reins a little bit, and help, get them even minutes, I would say. I think they're very good. I think it's a very good tandem. I love the Schwartz deal. I could see him playing perfectly with Jordan Eberle on that top line. I think that is going to be very helpful for them. And I love the Marcus Johansson deal. That is my favorite deal, and I think that could be an absolute steal of this whole free agency. If Johansson could get back to even a 15-goal pace, it's going to be fantastic for the Seattle team to get somebody who's a little bit older, but help these younger guys out and get some depth scoring, which depth scoring is crucial for many teams to be successful. Look at Tampa Bay, look at the Islanders, look at all these great teams. That the reason they go so far is their depth scoring. And you can see Boston's trying to replicate that because all they had was one line. So I think the forward core is definitely questionable here in Seattle. But I'll go bold. I think they'll make the playoffs.
Yeah, the roster came together a lot better than I thought. I mean, after the expansion draft, I was kind of like, I don't get it, but okay. And, now that I kind of see it on paper combined with the Jaden Schwartz move, like you said, Alexander Venberg had a really good bounce back season last year with the Florida Panthers. I don't hate it. I mean, they have a lot of depth. Also, the Yarncroc signing, really, really good from Nashville. I really like him a lot. So they got a lot of guys that are good depth scoring. They don't really have, I guess a star yet, but I wouldn't count them out of the playoffs. I agree. I think that they have enough there that Grubauer and Drieger could really carry this team to the playoffs, because if you look at the division, yes, Vegas will be in. I don't know who else. Like, I like, seriously, San Jose won't be. Calgary, I don't think so. Anaheim won't be. LA, I actually like their moves. LA could actually back themselves into a playoff spot somehow, some way.
They're another
if some of their really young guys, if they call up a lot of their prospects, they could actually do it. That division's bad. So I think they could come up with a playoff spot pretty easily.
Yeah, and I don't know who else. Vegas is obviously the clear number one. Edmonton, I'm looking at the standings from last year when the divisions were normal. Edmonton, they just signed Darnell Nurse to that horrendous contract. We could talk about that on a whole another podcast and how not to do an 8-year deal. Just ask Lou Lamoriello and Adam Pelech. That was an absolute steal. I had to throw that out there for you, Tim. But yeah, it's going to be one heck of a season, and it's going to be interesting. So lots of teams, there was lots of off-season activity. Like there was one signing after another, and this was crazy. So before we sign off, do you guys want to add anything else? Nope.
I will throw that out. That Pelech deal was a fantastic deal. And every team, I'm talking Chicago, Edmonton, New Jersey, take some notes. That is how you do it right there. And I would not be surprised if you see Islanders make a lot of moves soon. I think they have already signed Cizikas, Palmieri, Parisi. They just haven't been announced yet, but that's the way Lou Lamoriello does it. He likes people to not know what he's doing. So I think we're going to get Beauvillier back. I think we're going to bring back Sorokin. It's going to be awesome to see. And I'm going to bring it back to Washington here. I think that the Ovechkin deal might be the best deal of free agency. I think I'm going to go ahead and say that money-wise. But yeah, that's – and one more thing, I'm sorry. We should make this like people pay, because what I just saw from Chris today was the best thing I've ever seen all summer. And like the comic section should just be saying, Chris is God, Chris is God. He gets it. Because he gets it. And that's all I got to say, because that was just an absolute great performance, Chris. And I'm proud of you. That's all I got to say.
Well, listen, I mean, we've been saving up the Flyers talk for so long. It had to happen at some point. So listen, it could have been a lot more rant filled, but we got to be able to PSSN here. We got to be able to click the "It's for Kids" button. So can't go all in on the Flyers there. But yeah, really looking forward to this season.
Or the Phillies. That's another.
That's another podcast.
All right. So with that, for Chris Lemmo and Tim Rogers, I'm Jacob Cheris, and we'll be back. And maybe you'll see some actual segments on PSSN. Have a good day.
Thank you for watching this edition of Penn State Sports Night. If you're a fan of our content, please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more clips. Also, follow us on Twitter at PSSN TV and on Instagram at PSU Sports Night to keep up with all the action. For all my colleagues, we are Penn State Sports Night.